So, Mr. Gualtieri, would you like to call the meeting to order?
Sure. I'll call the meeting to order and ask that when participants speak, if they can introduce themselves just for record keeping purposes, and so we know who's speaking when. So, and I'll just start. For those of you who I don't know, I met most of you at our board training, but Claudio Gualtieri, the still relatively new Undersecretary of Health and Human Services, I'm told you can use that new title for up to a year. So I intend to take every minute. And I'm glad to be joining Access Health. I think that there's been some really exciting work in this space, especially building on some of the new stimulus money that came from Washington and making healthcare more affordable. In collaboration with the legislature, there was a really robust effort to create a covered Connecticut program that we're going to be talking about the financing for that piece in our meeting today. So eager to be working closely with all you on the finance and audit role.
Mr. Gualtieri, do you mind if I call the roll call for the attendance?
Yeah, go ahead. Thank you.
Okay. Claudio Gualtieri?
Here.
Brian Rader?
Here.
CC Woods?
Here.
Yvonne Addo?
Present.
And Matthew Brackman?
Present.
Thank you. Full quorum.
Great. Then we'll also ask for our Clifton, Lars, Allen representatives if they could introduce themselves briefly.
Hi, good morning. I'm Nicoleta McTighe, Principal in charge of the audit for the Access Health.
And I am David Flint, the manager on the engagement.
Thank you both. Appreciate that. I'll now turn it over to Susan, who's going to talk a little bit about a motion that we need to make at the top here.
Thank you. Susan Rich-By, Director of Legal and Governmental Affairs at Access Health Connecticut. So the first vote we need is for a presiding officer for this meeting, as we currently do not have a chair. So I will turn it over to you to call for a motion.
So I'll request a motion that I, Claudio Gualtieri, act as presiding officer for the November 9th, 2021 meeting in the absence of the chair.
So moved. Grant Ritter.
Thanks,
Seconded,
Grant.
CC Woods.
Thanks, Cece. Having heard a motion and a second, can you please take the roll?
Sure. Claudio Gualtieri?
Yes?
Brian Rader?
Yes.
CC Woods?
Yes.
Yvonne Addo?
Yes.
And Matthew Brackman?
Sure.
Thank you.
We can now move to a review and approval of the minutes from our previous meeting on June 10th. So I'll ask for a motion to approve the June 10th, 2021 meeting minutes.
So moved. Grant Ritter.
Thanks, Grant. Is there a second?
Seconded, CC Woods.
CC, thank you for second. Can we have a roll call on that?
Sure. Claudio Gualtieri?
Yes?
Brian Rader?
Yes.
CC Woods?
Yes.
Yvonne Addo?
Yes.
And Matthew Brackman?
Can I abstain? I'd like to abstain.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll now turn it back to Susan, who will introduce the next motion that we have for consideration.
Thank you. Susan Rich-By again. We are going to nominate Claudio Gualtieri to be the chair of the committee as the designee for Secretary Melissa McCaw of OPM to serve as the chair of the audit committee.
Motion is requested. Do I have a motion from the committee?
Matt Brockman, so moved.
Thank you, Matt. Is there a second?
Yvonne Addo, second.
Thank you, Yvonne.
A roll call.
Go ahead.
Claudio Gualtieri?
Yes?
Brian Rader?
Yes.
CC Woods?
Yes.
Yvonne Addo?
Yes.
And Mr. Matthew Brackman?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. We're going to now, I would like to ask Susan to introduce our guests more formally and tee up the conversation that we have of the audit review today.
Thank you, Susan Rich Bai again. Part of our requirements under the ACA and also state law is to have an independent financial audit conducted annually, and also under the ACA, we are required to have a programmatic audit. So I'm going to introduce Nicoletta McTighe from Clifton Larson and Allen, first to present the results of the 2021 independent financial audit.
Thank you, Susan. Nicoletta McTighe again. On the slide, you see the agenda for our presentation. With me today is David Flint, the manager on the job. I'll go over the first 3 items of the agenda: the audit scope, reporting results, and some of the financial highlights of the audit. And David will cover programmatic audit and required communications for the audit. And the last slide has our contact information. So we were engaged to express an opinion as to whether the basic financial statements for Access Health are presented fairly in conformity with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States of America. In addition, we are engaged to report on internal controls over financial statements and compliance with laws and regulations as required in accordance with government auditing standards. And the last item is the report on compliance with the programmatic audit as set forth by CMS in the Title 45 of the U.S. Code of Federal Regulations, Part 155. So as a result of our audits, under the generally accepted auditing standards, we issued an unmodified opinion on the basic financial statements as of June 30th, 2021, and for the year then ended. Under government auditing standards, we did not have any findings, so we did not report any internal control or findings over financial reporting and laws and regulations. And as David will mention later in his presentation, there were no compliance findings for the programmatic procedures that we performed. In this slide, you see comparative numbers for the statement of net positions for fiscal year ended June 30th, 2020 and 2021. Access Health ended the year with a total net position of $34.5 million, which was an increase of about $1.6 million in comparison to prior year, and that is about 4.8% increase. As you can see, total assets increased by about $1.8 million, and majority of that increase was capitalization of software development under capital asset caption there in the report. Liabilities stayed pretty much the same as the prior year. So as a result of increase in the asset, total net position for the current year increased by $1.6 million. You'll notice there that in the total net position, there are 2 parts that are reported. One is net investment in capital assets of $10.6 million, and unrestricted is about $24 million at June 30th, 2021. The change in the total net position could be better understood if we look at the next slide, which is a change on the net position. So as you can see for the year, oh, my light just went off. As I mentioned, the first slide, net position increased by $1.5 million. Total revenue decreased by $1.3 million, and total expenses increased by $531,000. But overall, Access Health had a positive change in the statement of net position by about $1.6 million. Individual changes of the line items on the statement of revenues, expenses, and change in net position are presented in this slide. As you can see, the majority decrease in the current year was in the consultant's expense line item. as we mentioned initially, we, in addition to the financial statement audit, we perform a programmatic audit as required. And David will go over the requirements, and there are several of them, but we report only on 4 of them as highlighted. Go ahead, David.
Thank you, Nicoletta. David Flint here from Clifton Larson Allen. In regards to the programmatic audit, our responsibility was to perform a programmatic audit on Access Health's compliance with 45 CFR Part 155, which deals specifically with insurance exchanges. Based on the criteria outlined in Part 155, we developed audit procedures to address the following areas: general standards, general functions, eligibility determinations, enrollment functions, appeals of eligibility determinations, exemptions, SHOP, which is Small Business Health Options Program, certification of qualified health plans, oversight and program integrity standards, state flexibility, and quality reporting standards. Now, I'd like to draw your attention to those. Sorry, if you could just go back 1 slide, please. I'd like to draw your attention to those 4 bolded subparts, which were identified by the Center for Medicaid and Medicare Services as the core functions of marketplace operations. Although our audit procedures were developed to address all the subparts, we are specifically reporting on these 4 core functions. Next slide, please. So we're happy to report that we issued an unmodified opinion on compliance with respect to Access Health's compliance with 45 CFR Part 155. We do not have any findings to report or any additional recommendations. Next slide, please. Now, finally, I'm going to cover some items that we are required to communicate to you as your auditors. So management is responsible for the selection and use of appropriate accounting policies. No new policies were adopted in fiscal year 2021. The financial statements include estimates that are based on management's knowledge and experience about past and future events. We did not encounter any significant difficulties in dealing with management. Management did not identify, and we did not notify them of any uncorrected financial statement misstatements. There were no disagreements with management. We have requested management to make certain representations in a management representation letter dated November 3rd. Next slide, please. We have various discussions with management prior to the engagement as auditors. However, these discussions occurred in the normal course of our professional relationship, and our responses were not a condition of the engagement. We did not have any significant findings or issues. And finally, in regard to the supplementary information included within the audited financial statements, we compared that information to the underlying accounting records that were used to prepare the financial statements. However, we do not express an opinion on it. The next slide will have our contact information. If anyone ever needs to reach out to us with any questions, comments, or concerns, we are always available to you.
Thank you, David. So that concludes our prepared presentation for the audit.
Mr. Chair, I believe we have to take some vote.
Right, and so we have been in receipt of presentations on both the audited financial statements and the programmatic audit report. So I would take 2 separate votes. We'll do them sequentially. I'll first entertain.
Excuse me, could we have a question? I mean, could we have
sure.
questions? Yeah.
Sure, correct.
This is Grant Ritter. I'm a little confused. It seems like revenues are down for the year and expenses are up, and yet we're in a better position than we were at the beginning of the year. How is that possible? What am I missing here? And it could be in capital assets or something. I don't know.
So if you just look at column 2021, revenues exceeded the expenses for the current year, but comparatively, revenues were lower than the prior year, and expenditures were higher. So if we are to compare the results of the current year to the prior year, in 2020, the net position increased by $3.4 million, and in the current year, the net position increased by only $1.6 million. But for the current year, the results of the operations were still positive. Revenues exceeded the expenses.
So even, okay, so it went up less than it went up the year before. It went up by
Exactly.
$10 million. It only went up by $1.5 million this year. All right, yeah.
Right.
So
Also,
we're still spending less than we take in, even though revenues are down, but we're still
Correct.
spending less.
yeah,
Okay.
right.
Okay, thank you very
Grant,
much. That's just
Grant,
helps.
If you forgive me for one quick. If you remember last year, when we knew that our revenues were going to be lower, we had a conversation at the finance committee as well as the board, and we also said that we'll make adjustments accordingly to make sure we stay within the budget. I think
Right.
we reported that either earlier this year or late last year.
Okay, thank you.
Is
So
there
this is
further
Yvonne.
discussion?
Do I have a follow-up question, Mr. Chair?
Yes, Yvonne, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. So can you remind me the fiscal year again? Is it July through June?
Yes.
What
Correct.
period? Okay.
Correct.
Yes, it
Thank
is.
you.
July 1st to June 30th.
Thank you.
And
Just
Grant,
a
if
little
there's, sorry.
Mr. Chairman, a little context. Remember our revenue is based on an annual basis, and using insurance premium as a basis to calculate our revenue stream, which is 1.65% of premiums collected, net premiums collected for health, individual health, small group health, and dental. All right, so that's done on an annual basis. So at the end of December last year, we knew based on those calculations that our premiums, revenue would be down because premiums have been going down. Right, and this is after this we went to the board and give the board a heads up that premiums are projected to be low, so we will adjust our expenses accordingly. And by the way, being home for COVID also helped out as well. So there are a lot of
Right.
expenses that somebody have had that helped as well.
That's really helpful. Thank you. Any other discussion, questions from the committee members?
No.
Hearing none, I'll entertain the first motion to approve the FY 2021 Access Health CT audited financial statements as presented.
So moved, Grant Ritter.
Thanks, Grant.
Second, Yvonne Otto.
Thank you. It's moved and seconded. Can we go ahead and take a roll call vote?
Sure. Claudia Gualtieri,
Yes?
Grant Ritter,
Yes.
CC Woods,
Yes.
Yvonne Otto,
Yes.
and Matthew Brockman.
Yes.
Thank you.
I'll now entertain a second motion. This motion specific to the approval of the FY 2021 programmatic audit report as presented. Is there a motion?
So moved, CC Woods.
Thank you, CC. Do I have a second?
Yvonne Otto.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. We'll move to a roll call vote.
Claudia Gualtieri,
Yes?
Grant Ritter,
Yes.
CC Woods,
Yes.
Yvonne Otto,
Yes.
and Matthew Brockman.
Yes.
Thank you.
Susan, do you want to take the next presentation on the SMART tool?
Yes, thank you. So we talk about this. One of the other audits that we have to do every year is the SMART, which is the State-Based Marketplace Annual Reporting Tool. So the ACA requires state-based marketplaces such as Access Health to keep accurate accounting of all activities, receipts, and expenditures, and to monitor and report to HHS on exchange-related activities, and to complete an annual report and engage an independent auditor to perform annual independent financial and programmatic audits to ensure our compliance with the regulations and standards of the ACA. So back in 2015, CMS developed an online annual reporting tool for exchanges to use to make it easier to pull all the requirements into one report, which is now referred to as the SMART. The SMART has 4 components that are reviewed: eligibility and enrollment, the financial and programmatic audits, which we just reviewed today, program integrity, and then finally an attestation of completion. So Access Health filed its SMART for plan year 2020, and this report, by the way, is done in a plan year. And the other audits are done for fiscal year, so there's a little overlap. But we filed our SMART for plan year 2020 on June 1st, and on September 27th of this year, CMS issues its SMART Summary of Observations and Action Items for Access Health CT. CMS did not identify any action items or recommendations or findings for the SMART filing for 2020. So we are all set with that. So we just wanted to let the committee know, and we will let the board know. And that is it, if anyone has any questions.
Any questions or comments from the committee?
It's a beautiful thing. Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
So that concludes our formal agenda for this morning. If there's no other comments or statements from the committee members, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So
So
moved, Grant
moved,
Ritter.
CC Woods. Oh, okay. I'll second that, CC Woods.
Who made the motion? I'm sorry.
Grant.
Grant made the motion.
Thank you.
Seconded by CC.
Thank you. And the roll call, Claudio Gualtieri,
Yes.
Ron Ritter,
Yes.
CC Woods,
Yes.
Yvonne Addo,
Yes.
and Matthew Brackman.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Motion
All right.
passes. And congratulations, Mr. Gualtieri, on becoming a chair.
Yes.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Have a
you.
good day, all.
Thanks.
Okay. Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Somebody sent like clapping hands.